Hey guys, that's better. Hey guys, it's Steve here from CG Geek, and welcome to a new Blender tutorial, the first tutorial in the new studio. So, yay! And if you'd like a quick tour of the studio, check out the video I just posted recently. Should be a link to it up there. Now, as you might have already been able to tell, this video is going to be on how to draw 2D characters in Blender, and we'll be using a graphics tablet. I got my graphics tablet glove on because it looks cool. Oh, and I guess there's also some practical reasons to it, but mainly because it looks cool. It is a little bit helpful because when you're moving your hand across your display and stuff, your hand doesn't really grip the screen. It doesn't accidentally give you a touch or anything, and it's just easier to kind of slide around your palm when you're drawing on a graphics tablet. So, I mean, it comes with it. Might as well use it, right? So in this new Blender 2.8 tutorial, we'll be creating a cute zombie character in Scratch in 2D using Blender 2.8's new grease pencil features. So the grease pencil has come a long way since Blender 2.7. It's pretty much completely different, so much different that I think it should probably get its own name actually. So now, just like I mentioned in my previous video, 2.8 is not officially released yet. It comes out officially early 2019, but right now we're using the alpha and it's working very well, very stable, and grease pencil is pretty much what it's going to be like for the rest of 2.8. So it's not going to really change much, but if it does, I'll let you guys know in a pinned comment. Also, before I get started, I'd like to thank everyone over on my Patreon page for your support. And if you'd like to download the finished zombie character that we create in this tutorial, it will be available over on my Patreon page for just $3 a month. You get access to that, and every single other blend you've ever seen on the channel will be available on there for the Patreons. So I'd like to give you guys a big thank you for everything you've done over the years. And if you want to download the character, it's available to you over there. So a few things real quick about the tablet that I'm using. It's a Vike tablet. It was supplied by GearBest for review, so I'd like to thank GearBest for sending this over. I've been really impressed with it. I've been using it for a few weeks now. It's got a nice big 15.5-inch IPS HD display, so it works really well. It's got some good viewing angles, and it isn't too reflective, maybe just a little bit reflective, but not super reflective, which is good. And yeah, I've liked it. It has some good pressure sensitivity. The drivers for it and software is a little bit meh. I'm not too crazy about the software that it comes with, but you don't really have to use it much. Once you get it set up to your liking, you can go ahead and you'll be good to go. So yeah, I can recommend it if you're looking for a tablet around the $350 range or so. It's definitely a great option, and I've been really happy with it. I'm excited to continue using it in future videos and content. So yeah, if you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description where you can see the Vike tablet. And I really think a display tablet is important because in my experience, when you're using a graphics tablet without a screen on it, so you're drawing down here while you're looking up there, it makes it really confusing. And being able to just draw right on the screen makes life a lot easier. So I do highly recommend, if you can afford it, getting a display graphics tablet, as it makes life a whole lot easier. One quick thing, there's probably still a decent amount of echo in the audio as I haven't gotten all the soundproofing foam up, and I'm still lacking that furniture that I mentioned in that previous video. So over in Blender 2.8 now, what basically used to be the grease pencil is now called an annotation tool or a notes tool, where you can go ahead and make notes or reminders across your scene. It's located over here in the toolbar, and you can just go ahead and use this to right away draw anything you want onto your scene and make a note. So it's handy for that, and it basically serves the purpose of what the previous grease pencil used to do. You can go ahead and change the color of your note and yeah, do whatever you want with it right up here. And make it red if you want it or whatnot. But basically just for simple notes, you have a few layers and you can add whatever note you want wherever you want. So it's pretty nice and it's handy. But grease pencil is basically an entirely new 2D animation drawing software implemented into Blender now. So it's its own thing and it's extremely powerful. So before I go any further, I want to quick mention how I have my graphics tablet set up here. On the little pen here, you can see there's two buttons. And I set up the one button to basically be the middle mouse button, so I can go ahead and pan around in 3D real easy just by grabbing and holding that button. And then I made the other button the right click, because as everyone knows, in Blender, you use the right click to select different objects and stuff. So it's handy. So that's what I did for this. And then along the side here on this particular Vike tablet, you have all kinds of different buttons that are programmable with the software downloaded on Vike's website. And you also have like a scroll wheel here that you can use to zoom in and out of your scene and stuff. So it's really handy to kind of operate in 3D and stuff using some of these buttons. I also programmed one of the buttons to be Control X, or X for Blender, so I can go ahead and erase things, as you can see here, just by hitting that button. So it's pretty handy, and that makes life a lot easier. I haven't programmed all the buttons, but I programmed a few to be buttons that I use often, and it improves your workflow and makes things go faster. Alright, so let's dive in and really take a look at what Blender 2.8's Grease Pencil tool has become. To do this, I'm going to go up to File, I'm going to choose New, and then I'm going to scroll over to 2D Animation. And we're just going to choose that so we get kind of a blank new default scene that's more meant for 2D drawing and stuff in Blender and not 3D work. So the way the Grease Pencil works now is when you draw something, it's its own object. And if you kind of scroll around here in 3D view real quick, this again I'm doing on my pen just by holding the button that's programmed to be the middle mouse button. You can see that it's its own object. And if I switch from the draw menu up in the corner here to object mode, you can see that it's its own object and can be rotated and scaled just like any object within Blender, but it's containing that 2D artwork that we just drew. So this makes it really powerful because just like Blender and its objects and stuff, you can use different materials and stuff on your different objects, and you can come back and, for example, take this black material over here in my sidebar, and I can change that color even after it's drawn to a different color. So this is how it's very different from something like Photoshop, for example, because with Photoshop, once you draw something, it's done. But with the Grease Pencil now, you can have control over whatever you want and basically change your materials later if you decide you don't really like the look of something, because it's all still using basically the formula that Blender uses for its materials and stuff on its 2D objects. Alright, so let's quick take a look at some of the different brushes that come with the new Grease Pencil tool in Blender, and then we'll start actually drawing our character. So first off, you see you have your basic sort of pencil brush. This is sort of a nice sketchy brush by default. If I change this color back to black here, you can see this nice little sketchy brush that is good for quickly sketching out things. And this is what I'm going to do to first sketch out my object. Then you have a pen, which gives you some nice harder lines. Again, you have like a brush here then, which gives you even thicker, nice lines. These are just default options that you can use. If you want to get more creative and change them to your own liking, you can go up here and there's different brush settings where you can turn down the smoothing and the thickness and all those different post-processing options and stuff. But that's a little bit more advanced, and we're just staying completely basic. So we'll just use the options that they give you here because it's all you really need. Then you have basically like a fat marker there, some other pens and stuff. And then you have your paint bucket, which is for filling in holes, just like in Photoshop or something. And then you have some different eraser options. A soft eraser, a hard eraser, and then basically a whole stroke eraser. So this will erase any stroke that you click. So if you want to take back a whole stroke, you can just use that and quickly clean up your scene. All right, so let's get started drawing our character. Now that we know the basics, we have our tools over here. We have our layers over here, just like in Photoshop or something, if you've ever used a program like that. And then down here, we have our materials. So all these things we're going to be using and operating, and I'll kind of go over them as we come to them later on. So we can get started right off the bat with our character. I'm going to hit 1 on my number pad and then 5 on my keyboard to kind of get rid of that grid floor. And you can also go up to the overlays here and just hit that button to turn off all the overlays so you have a nice clean white palette to work off of. Now, as you can kind of see in my setup here, I like to have my drawing tablet to the right with my keyboard to the left when I'm working in Blender, because this gives me the option to still do some of the shortcut key commands that I need to do from different times, like 1, 2, 3, 4 for changing views and stuff. And I can do that with my left hand while I still operate with my right hand on my pen, just like I would with my mouse. So it just kind of makes it easy to work in Blender, and that's how I like to have it set up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and grab our pencil, and then grab our pencil in Blender here in the 2D animation segment, and let's start sketching out our drawing. So with our pencil selected and our black material selected, and on our layer we're going with our lines option, not our fills, just because to keep it nice and organized. I'm going to use my black brush here. I'm going to make it just a little softer even, so it's not, well actually I can just take the opacity down by taking the alpha here down. So I'm just going to make it so it's a bit softer, as you can see, not a hard line as I'm doing sketches. And I'll just erase that, and I'm going to start sketching out basically the object, which is going to be, like I said in the beginning, a little zombie character. So we're going to start with the head, and I'm just going to start with his basic kind of square head here, drawing a bunch of lines in sort of a sketchy fashion. I'm going to say right off the bat that I am not a great artist when it comes to 2D work, but I'm good enough to get by, I would say. Just depends what you say getting by. But yeah, I mean, I made this work, so this is how I do it. Maybe it's not the right way, but it works for me, and maybe it will work for you as well. So just sort of sketching out the outline of the zombie that I'm going to be creating. These lines are by no means permanent, but that's why we're doing them as a sketch, so we can come back and sort of change them later. So I want his head to be really nice and tall and exaggerated, so I'm going to go up about that high or so. Kind of a straight line along the back, pretty square top of the head, and then a rounded edge there, sort of a straight line jaw, and then a straight line jaw kind of coming to it there. Okay, so that's the rough, very rough, basically facial proportions. And then for the eyes, he's going to be kind of coming across here with his eyes on an angle or so. And so that kind of just helps you get the eye placement in line by doing those two lines. Now at this point, you might already be like, well, okay, I kind of like it, but the shape is off. And that's where we can use the sculpt option that is in the draw tool. Like I said earlier, because it's an object, we can go into sculpt mode here, drop it down to sculpt mode, and we can actually reposition our lines right off the bat if you made a mistake. So this kind of makes it impossible to be a bad artist, in my opinion. I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but it really does. It makes it impossible to mess up, because you can come here, you can choose this tool here, for example, the grab tool, and if I hit F on my keyboard, I can make my brush bigger or smaller, and you can move your lines around. So say I wanted this to be a little bit of a fatter head, I can come here and I can just grab these lines using my pen here and pull these lines out a bit further. And now there you have it. You got a fatter sort of zombie head. And so it's pretty impossible to draw wrong, because you can always come back and move your lines. And that's why I've been really liking the grease pencil thus far. I think it's really cool. And there's a whole ton of potential to be had here. So once you have your lines, if they're kind of squiggly like that, you can just grab the smooth brush here and smooth those lines out a little bit. Maybe grab this one and just kind of smooth those out a bit. This is actually darkening a little bit. I want to use the top one here and hit F to make my brush a little bit bigger, and just smooth those lines out. You can see that makes it a nice straight line, and we're back in business. So go ahead and switch back to your draw mode, and we can actually start on the body now, because I kind of like the shape of that head. So let's go ahead, and we're going to have a little bit of an arm shoulder here. This is a zombie, so his head's kind of squished up here by his arm. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a cute little arm here, basically just something like that. Sketch out the lines. That's all I need. And then he has another arm sort of coming out over here, right next to him, of course, just like a person. So again, a quick sketchy line. If you don't like it, just draw some more lines where you want it to be, because this is by no means permanent. And then his portly little body here. So we're going to go ahead and do sort of like a pear-shaped little tummy here on our zombie character. Just kind of drawing out that pear-shaped body, coming around like so. Maybe that's a little bit, I think that'll work. Again, we can move the lines later if we don't like it. He has kind of a belt here, so I'm just kind of sketching that out as well. And then coming down like that. That'll work. Maybe make it a little bit shorter, in which case we can just jump to sculpt mode, grab that grab brush, and pull his whole body up a bit. Now he's a little shorter and fatter. Exactly what we want. We can smooth those lines out again if we want to. And we're back in business. So going back to draw mode, I'm going to go ahead and sketch out his legs here. So for the legs, I kind of just gave him like a bell-bottom sort of leg. Just pretty basic, kind of cute. But for the rest of this, I'm going to time-lapse it real quick, so you guys don't get bored with me kind of repeating myself at this point. And it's all the same stuff, just sketching out your lines. If you don't like the way it looks, sketch it some more. If you really don't like the way it looks, move it around with the sculpt tool brush. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And yeah, I'll be right back with you guys once I'm done sketching this out. Okay, and here's our basic quick sketch. You can see it's pretty messy still, but that's all we need to start doing some thicker painted lines on it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new layer over here, and I'm going to name this, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it, I'll go paint. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move it down, Z paint, whatever, that works. And I'm going to choose our paintbrush, which is a nice fat sort of brush. It gets fatter the more you push with the sensitivity. Again, I've been really impressed with the sensitivity on this tablet. I like the way I can, I had to tweak the settings a little bit. Right out of the box, it was off a little bit, I thought. But for me, it got nice where you can get a nice thin line or a nice thicker line with the pressure sensitivity on this Vike tablet. So I've been happy with that. Okay, so with the paintbrush selected, I'm going to create a new material. This is again going to be just a black material, but I want the opacity to be 100% on this one, whereas with my sketchy black color, it was only at about a 6% or 0.6% because I want solid lines now. So with our sketch in place, with the layer selected and the material selected, with our paintbrush selected, we can go ahead and start painting in the solid lines to kind of fill out our zombie character here. So for the black material, I really only want this around the eyes and the mouth. Everything else is going to be kind of a dark green material. So I'm just going to focus on the face here, and I'm going to zoom in real quick using the scroll wheel here on my tablet. I'm going to go ahead and position him right over here. Basically, the more you zoom in, the easier it is to get a nice clean line. So I'm going to zoom in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and do that brow line just by grabbing my brush and pulling it across the top there. So we have a nice brow, and I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the eyes, pulling those down, looping them around. Again, you can always come back and tweak these, so you don't have to be too picky about it. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time, just as I didn't make it all the way up there. There we go, and then one more line here for the other eye. Now for the eyeballs, same deal. Just going to go ahead and fill those out. If you don't like it, go ahead and erase it. Otherwise, if it's close, you can make it work with moving the lines around in sculpt mode. I'm just gonna go ahead and round this eyeball over like so. Get a nice clean round line. So that looks pretty good for the eyes there. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and do the squiggly mouth here by following along those lines somewhat closely. And then the tongue will be its own. Well, we can go ahead and fill out the tongue there. Nice little tongue. He also has a little tooth here, but we'll add that later. And that's essentially it for the black material. Now, for the rest of the outlines here, I want to do them in the color that the skin will be basically, but a darker color. So to do this, I'm just gonna make a new material over here, and we're gonna make this kind of a zombie green color. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that, crank it up to be a nice sort of darker green color. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, you can go ahead and change these colors later on. So it's really impossible to get it wrong because you can always come back and change the color to what you're liking. But with my paint brush here, I'm going to go ahead and start filling out some of these lines. So starting in the corner here, I'm going to pull this up, pull it over, pull that loop around, and we're just going to come all the way down, and we'll just fill out the whole face with this outline. So a rough outline, but it looks okay. And if you're not liking how smooth your brush is, maybe you have sort of a shaky hand, you can even go up to your brush settings here and change the smoothness. So right now it's at 0.1. Maybe you want to try a 0.2. If you have shaky hands and you're not getting the value that you want, go ahead and change that to a 0.2 and try it again, and maybe you'll like it better. So it's just kind of playing around and getting what works for you, and if you feel like you draw the best with it a bit smoother, go ahead and by all means make it smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this outline here just by pulling the brush around. That looks pretty good. It could always be tweaked, but I'm happy enough with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the little spots on his head here. These are the, I guess you could call them warts or something on a zombie. I want to make sure I fill out the hole so I can easily paint inside of it later. So I'm going ahead and filling in the hole completely. Just a few different size holes there. That's all you really need. Now we have the ear here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, down, and over. Just kind of a square ear. It's pretty basic. Something like that's all you really need. Again, you can come back with the eraser now. We can use a hard eraser. And I want to turn off or lock my lines so I don't paint those over, my sketch lines. But I can go ahead and paint over that layer now. So by locking that layer here, it means that we can only adjust the other layers. So there we have the ear kind of hanging out there. And we can jump back to our paintbrush here and just fill out the rest of his arms and legs. So same deal, just quick lines, filling them out here, not getting too crazy. This isn't going to be a super. This won't be an amazing work of art, as like I said, I'm not a artist when it comes to a pencil very much so, but it will be passable. So there's a quick hand there, and you got his arm coming down here. Got a little bit of a thumb there, a little bit of a bigger finger there, middle finger over here. And I'm just kind of making these fingers kind of cartoony by giving them a big sort of tip. So there you have it, our basic zombie character. Now if you kind of want to work on some proportions or something, it's kind of the time to do it before we start doing the fills. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to edit mode for the first time. And I'm going to grab my box selection tool here, and I'm going to select just the eyebrows here. So I'll scroll around there, selecting just those. You can see it's selected just like it is in edit mode or something would be in a 3D object, but this is 2D. And I'm going to hit S and just scale those eyes up quite a bit larger, as I want a bigger, more cartoony sort of eyeball. And then maybe his mouth could be a little bit longer. So I'm going to hit A twice to unselect all that. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the mouth there, except this time I'm just going to scale it up along the x-axis to give that sort of a longer mouth. And you can see how you can come back and totally change some of your drawing to get more of the look you were looking for in the grease pencil. So there's a few other things, like maybe his ears should be a little bit bigger. So what you can do for this is you can select just a little bit of it, and if you hover over it and hit L, it'll select the whole ear, and you can scale it up a bit bigger. Again, we'll have to clean up a little bit of those lines that are overlapping there now. We can do that with the eraser tool, or of course we could do that just by selecting them in edit mode here. I'll show you how to do that. Just select those lines, boom, boom, and then hit X and delete points. And it's basically the same method. So there we have it. Maybe pull over the side of his head there a little bit. So I think I'll do that in sculpt mode. Grab the grab brush here and just kind of tweak that by, let me see here, pulling that over a bit. Something like that. I think it might be more of the shape of the head that I'm going for. Round it over like that. Doesn't look too bad. And then we can smooth out those moved lines real quick, and this does a really nice job of making it just a nice organic sort of smooth line. Really cleans up in case you had some choppy lines that you weren't real happy with. You can smooth over them with this, and it makes it look nice and polished. So there we have it. The proportions I think are looking a bit better, and I'm ready to do some fills in a second here. I want to quick grab his legs here, his whole bottom half here. We'll grab that there too. We're going to turn on proportional editing. So you remember this if you've ever used Blender. You probably used it before. It's proportional editing, edits multiple areas of the mesh at the same time using a fall off. So we can go ahead and do G, and then using the scroll wheel, we can change how much we want the selection to basically change everything around it. So I'm going to pull that down a bit, and we're going to give him a little bit of a portly belly here just by pulling his legs up a bit like so. And if you want to smooth out that line a little bit, which actually I'm kind of liking, but maybe just a little bit, you can do that. And sculpt mode here. Let's make our brush a little bit smaller and just kind of round over that line a bit. And there you have it. So let's go ahead and do some fills now. So for the fills, let me smooth that line up a little bit there. And you can change the strength here, of course, if you want it to do more. So for the fills, I'm going to jump back to the draw brush. We're going to change our layer to the fills, and we'll go ahead and lock our previous layer so we don't change that at all. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. So I'm going to start with just a basic black material. So you can see it's already set up for the line, but for a fill, if I go down here a little bit further, it's transparent. And this is, you can see, fill. We want this to be 100% non-transparent. So we want to have 100% alpha. So I'm going to turn that to 1, and now it has a fill. So if I was going to use my basic brush now with this material selected, you can see up here it's also selected. It would be filling it in as I draw. So this is really handy for drawing things that you want filled and you're not too concerned about it. You can just do it with that. Or you can do it like I'm doing here and come back later with your paint bucket and just fill in those gaps. So right on the eye here, I'll go ahead and fill that in with black. But first I have to turn off the monitor visibility on my sketch lines, because otherwise those interact with the fill brush and I don't want them to right now. So we're just going to use our new fat lines, you call them. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and with this black selected on our fills layer here, we go ahead and fill in both those eyeballs with a black color. Again, you have some adjustments here for the leak size, the thickness, etc. I might turn the leak size up just a little bit, and then we can fill those in, and you can see it changes the way it looks a little bit. Maybe I want to go down with that actually. If I go less, I think it's a little bit more intense. So I'm going to go ahead and go for like a 2, and that looks pretty good. So there's the blacks in the eyes. Now let's go ahead and create a new material for the skin color. So for the skin, again, new material. This is going to be very similar to our zombie color, but a lighter color. So our outline has its own color basically. So this is kind of a blue-green, and yeah, something like that's all we really need. Again, you want to make sure it has a fill color. That's the same as the top color. So I'm just going to grab a little paint check there and make it identical, and then make it have 100% alpha here by turning that up. Then we can go ahead and paint his whole head green. Now you can see that also filled in our eyes, and that's probably because there's a gap somewhere along here, right there, yep, where it leaked in there. You could go ahead and patch that by, one of the options is holding Alt, and you can kind of draw a line for the paintbrush, and then it won't fill in that gap once you paint there. But another option is just to grab a black paint, go ahead and fill those back in. So to fill in those little gaps that you're also getting there, you can just change the thickness here a bit, and that will fill it in more. If I crank that up to about 50, we'll see that we fill it in nice and solid. Okay, so with those 2 lines filled, the black lines, let's go ahead and fill in some of the other areas. And we can also adjust the colors now. So the green might want to be a little bit darker for the outline. I can go ahead and adjust my color later now, and you can see that adjusts everything that you painted in that color different. So that's really handy for changing colors like that. And so I'm going to go ahead and do some more coloring here real quick. Just another material for the eyeball here. Again, I don't even need to use the lion color, so I can take the alpha down on that and just change the color for our solid now. So this is going to be kind of a yellow color for the eyeball here. Grab that color, make sure the paint bucket selected, and the color selected up here. So with our material selected here, and of course turn the alpha all the way up, you can see we can go ahead and paint the eyes in right there nicely. And then we go ahead and do the rest of the body. So if I was to paint this in, you can see the paint would escape through all these gaps that I didn't fill as I was drawing out the outline lines, and it would be a mess. So what I'm going to do to fix that is with the paintbrush, you can hold Alt down on a keyboard and then draw a thin line that will keep the paint basically within these boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that thin line around here, and around here, just filling these gaps in. Anywhere you see there might be a gap. And then when you go ahead and paint, it won't fill in beyond those gaps. Now, you might also have areas where it's just too difficult to paint accurately here. And what you can do then is hold Control down and basically just do a quick fill by hand. So if you have an area like this, you just fill it in within the lines, and then you can see it does a very nice job of keeping it within the lines. So that's all I'm going to do here. Is if you have to manually touch up some of your paint jobs, no big deal. And you get some cool looking results. It's also quite fun, I find. So I really like using the paintbrush most often. Unless I run into a bug, it can be frustrating. But then go ahead and just do the same thing on the other side, and yeah, enjoy painting. Okay, so there's sort of the basic fills, and you can see it's looking pretty cool. If I drop down my material bar here, you can see we have a lot of materials created now, and we can easily switch between them, and you can even tweak them. So for example, I kind of want to brighten up the zombie color now. I can go ahead and grab the fill color here and just brighten that up a bit to be a little bit more of the color that I might be looking for. So something like that looks kind of cool, and yeah, I think that's a good color for this character, kind of pale bluish green. And a little bit of a brighter color. And now what we can do is some shading and stuff. So first off, let's do the whites in his eyes and maybe that tooth. So a basic white material is all we need to do is add a material to a material stack there. Click new down here, and we're going to make that a solid white color. Drag that up real quick, all the way to the top, and maybe just a little bit less than 100% intensity, but full alpha. And again, we don't want a outline, so I'm just going to take that down to nothing on the line, but white on the fill. And if I zoom in here real quick, let's go ahead and do the whites in his eyes like I said. So over here, we're going to go ahead and do just a circle, and whoops. So over here, we're just going to do a circle, and this is going to be on the fills layer, and I'm going to grab that same brush that we were using before, and go ahead and paint out a circle Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the paintbrush we were using earlier, and with this almost set to 100% white, maybe like a 0.9 on all the values there, we're just going to do a circle in the corner of his eye here. And you can see this gives you the nice sort of whites in his eyes. I need to make sure I keep the intensity of that line to opaque there. And then, yeah, a nice circle in the corner there gives him sort of the whites in his eyes that make him look actually quite a bit cuter, I thought. And, yeah, give him a bit of personality. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those in the corner there, and then one over in the corner here as well. And just kind of have to find out where that line is hidden behind there and draw in the inside of it. So that'll work. Just two basic sort of whites in his eyes there. And now let's go ahead and give him that little tooth that he has kind of hanging out here. Just a little tooth, just a little detail. Maybe a crooked tooth would be kind of cute. And yeah, that's all you need to do. And there you have it. That's the white. Now what I'm going to do is for the highlights and shadows, I'm going to create two separate layers. So you can see we have a lot of materials here. And we're just going to add two more. Now these you might want to name because you'll be using them quite a bit. You might want to name all of them. I'm just lazy and that's why I haven't. But it might be a good idea to name all of them. And what I'm going to do for this layer is, again, I don't want any sort of outline. I just want the fill. And I'm going to pick sort of a dark color, make it just barely blue. As I want the shadows to be kind of blue looking and pretty dark. But then the alpha I'm going to change to be just like a 0.3 or so. We can always change this later again. But this is going to work to kind of paint out these shadows on our character. So let me zoom out just a little bit here so we have the whole head in view. Okay, so with my shadow material selected there, the paintbrush up here, I'm going to go just to the third of his head here basically. And I'm going to do kind of a rounded shadow along here. So just a nice round shape there. And then I'm going to pull it out along the brow and do another round right there. This is kind of to give definition to his brow there. And I'm just kind of following along my lines here. Come to the ear and we'll leave that brighter there. And then I'll go up along here and just sort of fill that out. So we have sort of giving him definition from the side here. This kind of gives his brow some definition. And then we have his ear here. So for his ear, we're going to leave this sort of a lighter color. And we'll do some highlights on it in a bit. But that's kind of it for the shadowing on his head there. Let's go ahead and give some shadowing to his arms and feet. So basic shadowing, we're just going to kind of do some rounded shapes. You don't have to be actually too great at drawing to do this either, fortunately, because I'm not great myself. And just any sort of basic outlines gives you some cool cartoon-like looking fingers. So I found this looked really good, and it's a really easy way to paint shadows in the new grease pencil tool. So go ahead and have some fun with this, just painting some shapes around on his hands, kind of keeping consistency to where the light might be pouring down on him. So I'm kind of going to the underside here of his fingers and stuff. But yeah, I think it looked just kind of cool and gave you some extra detail. So yeah, go ahead and play with that. Put some shadows around him, a little bit on his feet here maybe. Go ahead and do that. Boop, messed up a little bit. You could erase it or you could just do it again, which sometimes is quicker. But yeah, some basic shadows down there. And yeah, and then for his body, we need a little bit of shadow. So for the arm here, we'll kind of give him a wrapping shadow there, just like we did for the head. Pull it around, looks kind of good. For his tummy, we need to make it look like there's some definition there. So we're going to go ahead and give him a rounding shadow across there. Again, just pull it out along your line. And then we have to go around his arm here as well. Wrap it up, and that looks pretty cool. Same thing for this arm. Quick basic shadow, and it looks pretty good. You can do it down here as well, but you don't really see this as much on dark materials. But if you want to, go ahead. So that looks pretty good. Some basic shadows. You could even take it another layer depending on what kind of cartoon you're doing and give him darker shadows. I found just one basic shadow across him looked pretty good. And yeah, I like the way that sort of looked. So what we can do now is we can make another material and we can name this highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus key over here, plus key over there, plus key down here. Still kind of a wonky UI, but whatever. So the two plus keys to add in the material, and then we're going to change this to be a highlight. So we're going to go almost completely white and slightly yellowish. And then again, we want the opacity just a little bit, like a 0.2. And this we're going to come across, and we're going to give some definition to the side of his head here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint along here to the brow, and then around up to the top, and just follow along our outline there, filling it in. And you can see that gives a nice sort of cartoon shine to the side of his head there. We could do a little bit even in the eyeball here if we wanted to make his eyeball look a little bit brighter. But again, it's not showing up too intense, which is good because it's supposed to be subtle. You can always come back and give it a little bit more opacity if you want to later. And then yeah, across the top of his head here, I did a few layers to kind of make him look nice and rounded up there. So just painting over a nice circular spot where the light is kind of hitting his head. I thought looked pretty cool. And then down on his arms again, we can do a few highlights if you want to. Maybe his arm here, just a small highlight. I found keeping the highlights smaller than the shadows just kind of gave it some cool edge effects. And yeah, you get kind of a cute two-dimensional but sort of three-dimensional effect from adding the shadows like that. So I thought it looked kind of cool. You could even put it on his fingers a little bit to get some more detail everywhere you want. And yeah, have fun with it. So with that said there, just a few circles here and there to give him some shiny reflections. Maybe just a little bit there. Okay, maybe a little bit across his belt there maybe. Just kind of round that off a little bit. Whatever. You can put a little bit on his tummy there as well. Yeah, he's getting a little bit of a pouch going on right there. And you can turn the opacity down a little bit if it's looking a little too strong. You can always come back and tweak it. And yeah, that is the highlights. A little bit of highlights over on his ear here looks good to kind of fill that out a bit. A little bit of rim lighting, maybe a little bit of a circle right there on his ear. And yeah, you can go ahead and play around with the highlights wherever you want across your object now. I found a little bit of shadowing in his eyes looked pretty cool. So I can grab my shadow object here. I should name this one highlights. I never did that. Let's go ahead and do that left-handed. Woo! There we go. And we're going to go ahead and give a little bit of shadows to his eyebrows here. So kind of following that line and then coming down a little bit, giving him some shadow. I found looked kind of cool. Made him look a little bit more menacing. And you can kind of do two layers of this. One thinner and one thicker across both ends here. Just a basic sort of line shadow here. I'm going to start here, come along the brow, and then just pull it down a little bit. As you can see there. That looks kind of cool. Make him look a little bit more intense. And then one more highlight I did for the inside of his eyes, sort of a red color here. New material. Again, we don't want a stroke on it. No line. We just want the fill. Make it sort of a reddish material. And take the opacity down to just about a 0.2. And then along the edges of his eyes, you can kind of give him that red, menacing sort of zombie-ified look. You can tell that something's a little bit wrong with him. You could add a little bit to his tongue there as well, if you wanted to. A little bit along this edge here. And that's about it, guys. I might want to tweak that tongue material, make that a little bit pinkier, as it's a little bit intense right now. Maybe take the opacity down just a little bit on it too. Make it a little bit pinky. There you have it. And that's the basics of drawing in the grease pencil. Now, a few things that I didn't cover in this tutorial that I might cover real quick right now is, first of all, the grease pencil works with modifiers. So over in your stack here, you can see that it's now on the side. I'm not sure if this UI change is going to remain or not, but your options are along the side here now, and it's kind of cool. You can add grease pencil modifiers. You can add noise and thickness and things like that. And you can add effects. An effect you can add is like light or pixelate, for example. If you want to make it look like a really low quality zombie effect, you can go ahead and make them real pixelated, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's all kinds of effects and modifiers that can be added to this. And don't forget that this is three-dimensional. So I can pan around here now, and you can see that we have our 2D guy completely drawn in 3D. So we just stayed in front perspective the whole time and did our sketching, but now you can go ahead and move around and see that he is actually 3D, which is pretty cool. So the last few things we want to do to kind of finish out your scene here is you can give it a background color here, kind of a dark purple is what I settled on. Yeah, there is your completed zombie character. I hope you guys had fun with this tutorial. I did, and I had definitely a lot of fun playing around with the grease pencil in Blender 2.8. But that's going to kind of do it for me, guys. I hope you've had some fun following along with this tutorial. I'm not going to cover any sort of animation or anything in this tutorial, but definitely let me know if you'd like a video on animating in the grease pencil. That's going to kind of do it for me though. As you can see here, we have our 2D zombie character. He doesn't look too menacing, but trust me, you can't trust him. Do not let him get close to you. But yeah, that's going to do it. Oh, I forgot to, I didn't paint his warts in. We got to quick finish that off with a little bit of wart painting. So, real quick, back to our modifier stack here. Which one is it? These icons I'm not too crazy about right now. And it's likely to change back, but for now, this is what they are. And so, okay, there's our material stack. What else do we have down here? So I'm going to go to my drawing tools here for my layers, and then down here is my material stack. So I can go ahead and add one more material. This is going to be the wart color. Basically, no fill and sort of a gray color. Something like that, kind of nasty. And we can just quick fill out his warts there. Again, you want to make sure you're in front view though, with the 5 perspective view hit. Otherwise, you'll be drawing in the wrong view. You can always lock your view up here by locking it to a plane, and then you can't possibly draw anywhere but on that flat plane. So a lot of people like to do that. You can lock it to, for example, that, and then no matter how you draw, it's going to be on that flat plane. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, let's just go ahead and make sure we're in perspective view there and fill out those wart holes there for the zombie. Good enough, and we can grab our highlights and add a little bit of extra detail to those. So that looks kind of cool. I think he looks zombie-ified enough, in my opinion. And there we have it. So that's our zombie character. I hope you guys had some fun creating a zombie character in Blender. Like I said, I'm not doing any animation in this tutorial. It's just about creating the character. And you can go back if you wanted to now, and you can see where we kind of got out of the lines, for example, down here. And you could, of course, fix that up by locking our paint and just on our fills, erasing areas like that are sticking out. But that's going to do it, guys. I hope you had fun creating a zombie character in Blender 2.8 using the new grease pencil. I still think they need to rename that. That's going to do it for me, though. I'd like to again thank GearBest for sending over this graphics tablet for review. I can recommend the Vike if you're looking for an affordable $350 range graphics tablet with a full HD IPS display, and definitely check it out with the link in the description if you're interested in one yourself. It's a nice affordable option, a little bit cheaper than some of the other ones out there. So yeah, there'll be a link to GearBest and to this tablet in the description if you guys want to check that out. But there's our finished zombie character. I hope you guys had fun learning how to draw in 2D with Blender 2.8's new grease pencil feature. It's really cool. I'm really excited to start doing some more myself. I've already posted some things over on my Instagram page if you guys want to check that out in the description. But that's going to do it, and I will see you all in a future video tutorial. Bye!